Hello.
Hello, everyone. Good
I
morning.
think we're live. Let's just wait for the video feed to catch up. Yes, there it is.
So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good day to everyone out there. Yeah,
exactly. It's a bright, beautiful morning here on the eve of Christmas.
that's right. For those of you celebrating,
Yes.
happy Christmas Eve.
Merry Christmas.
And I believe it's also Hanukkah. So
Recently,
yeah.
or that era,
Yep.
we have a little festive decoration here at my insistence. So
gotta get into the holiday spirit.
Yeah.
Why
exactly.
not?
It happens once a year.
Why not? So we have some tea here. So with
Yes.
these yogi teas, they give you a little quote.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I got "Love has no boundary." What did you get?
Oh, that's so perfect for you. You love that one. All right. Mine is listen and you will develop intuition.
Well, that's good.
Wow. These are very
Listening.
What was it apropos for us?
You know, listening is so important. And we definitely talk about that on this channel. If you haven't watched it yet, the empathetic listening and the active listening lessons are up. So definitely check those out. I can also link them below if you're interested. Because communication is a two-way street. So if you're not listening, then you're not really communicating well, right?
Totally, right. And the listening, I think, is what allows you to sort of read the situation and speak in a way that is compelling.
Right, and to show understanding of the person that you're communicating
also to engage
with.
the listener.
To engage the listener and to show that you're on the same page as they. And to show empathy as well, because we love talking about that.
But that's not the topic today.
Today's topic is, well, if you've looked at the title, then you know, it's about shaky hands and shaky voice and trembling lips, which tend to happen when we're nervous.
Yeah, I remember, I haven't done that much public speaking lately, but I remember, I guess I did that wedding a little while ago. That was fun.
I feel like you've done a lot recently.
Yeah.
So Gregory was the MC, not the MC, the
Officiant.
That's right.
Officiant.
Officiant of, I swallowed a vowel there, of one of our close friends' weddings. And it was in it was in Paris, but it was right in the suburbs of Paris.
Yeah, beautiful little town, little old sort of retired castle type thing.
Yeah, an old estate that they've since started using as a venue, a wedding venue, event space, and I think mostly wedding venue. So it was so wonderful, and you did an amazing job.
Thank you. I did have a sheet of paper, but
you had practiced it so frequently and so well that you were so aware of what was going to come next.
Yeah.
The pauses that you added were for dramatic effect.
I think some of this we'll probably get into when we actually start talking about the remedies for shaky stuff.
Yeah. So where should we begin?
Well, I was just going to begin with an anecdote, which is that early on, but my point is it wasn't that long ago.
Okay.
I would have a pretty consistent issue where I would start speaking, and then all of a sudden my throat would kind of like tighten up, constrict, and it's like I can't get air out. And so it wasn't so much, and it would shake a little bit. So I didn't really have a shaky hands issue, but my voice would start warbling.
Warbling.
Yeah.
Quivering.
And it's like the air wouldn't go through.
That's terrifying, right?
It's the most bizarre thing.
Yeah.
And I could tell, and then as soon as it started happening, I was like, oh, everyone notices this.
Right, that's the thing, right? When we're in the moment and we're experiencing that minor trauma, you kind of think that, okay, well, everyone notices this as well. They can see that I'm shaking. They can see that I'm sweating profusely. And we think that the audience is experiencing what we're experiencing in real time.
They're like, you assume that they're in your head with you and freaking out alongside you.
Same thing with like a pause, right? Sometimes when we're, especially during public speaking or even sharing a story in a small group setting, again, another type of public speaking, in social interaction, when we pause, we sometimes think, especially with the silence there, we think that it's even longer than what it actually is.
Oh, it feels like forever.
It feels like an eternity, right?
Yeah, it's all in the head.
Okay, so you were saying, so
anyways, well, there's not much more to it other than that it was really, really hard. Once it started happening, it was like a snowball, right? And it started as a tiny little tremble. And as soon as I noticed it, I start focusing on it. And since I focused on it,
it exacerbates
like, 90% more muscle constriction started happening. And suddenly I could barely talk. And I was like, oh gosh, I'm just gonna have to sit down. And I'm trying, in the time, I think the best I could do was, I think I even might have told the audience, excuse me. And so I just took a deep breath and like kind of coughed a little bit to try and loosen up the muscles.
Right.
Yeah. But I was tense for probably another 1/3 of the speech and then managed to loosen up again.
Was this in business school?
I really don't remember the venue.
Was it in college?
This might have been actually at a separate wedding when I was giving a best man speech for another one of my friends down in, was it South Carolina?
You did a great job with that.
Well, then see, that's the thing. In my head, my voice was constricting and wavering.
All right. Well, I have it on camera, so I'll check it.
We'll see.
It's also really dark, though. The lighting was a little bit.
But the point is, it can just be in your head. But whether it's in your head or it isn't,
most of the time
it's definitely affecting you, and it's not a comfortable thing.
Not at all. And a lot of it is psychosomatic, right? So you get you feel all the nerves build up and the tension there, and then it somehow starts showing up in your physicality, right? So it's basically like, okay, I'm really nervous to speak in front of this, huge group in this venue that I have not experienced speaking in, and then you start, building up this story in your head about how you're not good enough, you didn't practice enough, you're too nervous, blah, blah, blah. And then that starts showing up in our body. And so that's when the shaking happens and the airflows is not as smooth. So one of the most important things with all of that is centering yourself and trying to breathe properly. And I'm not just talking about like, in through the nose, shallow breath. I'm talking about like the deep-seated breathing that we would typically find in like a meditation.
Diaphragmatic breathing?
Yeah. There's a video about that.
Yeah.
Check it out. It's called How to Project Your Voice. I will link it below because it's super relevant to, just mitigating the effects of the stage shakes, so to speak. And again, it doesn't have to happen on stage. It can also happen in a small group. It can happen in an interview. It can happen in a one-on-one sort of face-to-face setting.
Totally. Yeah. Now that I think about it, it's definitely happened in even one-on-one interviews.
Yeah.
I've definitely remember situations where I'm in a room and I have to put my hands. So in that case, I do have some trembling.
Right.
I try and put my hands on the table to steady them.
Yeah.
And I can just hear my voice kind of cracking and wavering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, it's always more apparent to us than it is. Ooh, just banged on my microphone. Than it is to the audience, right?
Right.
So if we can sort of get out of our own headspace, it really does help. The other thing I will like to, I want to say, and I have mentioned this before, is, so the first thing is the breathing, right? And this is something that you can do before, during, after, but definitely before.
Well, hopefully you're always breathing.
Right. But again, it's the
deliberate.
Hold it at the top.
Right.
And there's different ones. There's like 4-4-4. There's 7-7-7.
There's a cool meditation app. It's like a meditation light app by a guy we like, Kevin Rose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're watching Kevin Rose and his wife Daria,
you're awesome. We love you.
You guys are great.
Yeah. We got a ways to go until we can.
We just want to be friends with them.
I know. They're like, when you listen to them talk, I mean, mostly it's just Kevin.
He's so humble, right?
He's very humble. Very humble. He's always learning. He's totally happy to say he was wrong about something. Yeah. Always experimenting.
And the generosity of sharing like his experiences.
Shares everything. He doesn't have ads on his podcast.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, it just
so
goes
the Oak app, right?
So anyways, he's got an app. He was the founder of Dig, which was one of the early sort of social sharing technologies on the web. So anyways, Kevin Rose built a really cool app called Oak. And it's been on iOS for a while, and I think the Android version is available now. And it's very relevant to this video because the app itself does focus a lot on breathing.
Definitely, yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And as you're saying, I feel like so much in life actually comes down to breathing. If you can master your breathing, I think a lot of other aspects of life start to fall into place, right?
Yeah.
If you get more oxygen to your brain, more oxygen to your muscles, everything sort of works better.
Mm-hmm.
And by contrast, your panic mode, you end up breathing too fast. So you're not absorbing the oxygen.
So you're like hyperventilating.
In shallow breaths,
yeah.
which raises your carbon dioxide in your blood. And it actually significantly impairs your decision making, right? And so when you're panicking, your body's optimizing for rapid movement. It's not optimizing for thinking.
Right.
Right. And so if you can control your breathing, then basically what you do is switch your body into
thinking mode.
Problem solving. Yeah. Smart mode, which when you're talking to people, you want to sound smart.
Right. And you want to be able to think, right? You don't want to be tied to a script, because if the script somehow the papers get lost, or you just lose your train of thought with the actual like memorization that you tried so hard to do, then it's really, life throws you a curveball that way and you just get all disoriented.
Yeah.
But if you can breathe, then you can think.
Yeah, there's hard science showing that your IQ drops significantly when your breathing is off, just because your brain's not thinking the way it should.
Right. And even, this is a little bit of a tangent here, but even something like when you get upset, right? In the heat of the moment, we might say something that we regret. We might behave a way that we are not proud of. And so if we can take the time to just pause for a minute and breathe, then we're not going to make any of those silly, mistakes that we might have if we hadn't.
We need to do a live about conflict management at some point.
Yeah, we'll do that.
That's a good one.
So,
we're always thinking of these ideas as you do them. And of course,
well done.
Don't forget, please let us know if you're interested in any ideas as well.
Yeah, and comment below, go to the sidebar with the interactive chat. I know that some of you are watching this afterwards, which of course we welcome and we encourage. Yeah. So the first thing, right, is the breathing. Okay, and the deep-seated breathing.
Yep.
The second thing is to shift the attention from you as a speaker, again, in the public speaking setting, in the one-on-one, in the small group, any type of social interaction and public speaking. So you shift the attention from you to the audience. So with a speech, giving a speech or something like that, it's a little bit easier to sort of wrap your mind around, because it's really about, okay, well, this is not about me. People didn't come to this talk to, see what I'm wearing or see how my hair is or, whatever, physical or,
I'm always worried about my hair.
Right. So we take the attention, or even just, do I sound smart? Do I sound, whatever it might be that you're thinking about at the time. You take the focus off of you and you put it onto the audience, meaning, are you delivering value to them? Are you there to share a funny story? Are you there to give them an informative talk? Are you there to persuade them to, take better care of their mental well-being and physical well-being? I don't know, whatever it is, right? But the point is you shift the focus from you to the audience.
Yeah, I love that, because when you're thinking about you, you're by definition not thinking about others.
And we're self-conscious about it.
We're self-conscious, and we start focusing on stuff that frankly the audience doesn't really care about.
Most of the time they don't even notice.
Yeah, they're not, and if they do, they're probably not your target audience anyways.
And if they do, it shows that you're a human, right? You're not, an AI or
well, sure. There's the human aspects of that too, right? You have faults and so forth. But the thing I like about what you're saying is, once you start focusing on delivering value, when you start focusing on the real purpose for why you're there, that also, I think, allows you to focus on or sort of like orient your mind around the content of your speech.
Definitely.
Right? And you can start to articulate it more clearly. It'll start to, if your goal is comprehension, then that also will compel you to sort of scan the room,
right,
and determine if people are understanding what you're saying, and
to
engage. Right. If you're worried about sort of the wrinkles in your shirt, you're not going to be assessing whether or not Mandy in row 2 understood what you're saying. Right. You're not going to be asking questions. Whereas if you do focus on delivering this value, then everything you're doing is going to be oriented around that, and as a result, it's going to be a much better speech, and the audience is going to be
more engaged,
and just more grateful, right?
Definitely. And then there's the interactive component that you bring into that. Like you said, when you're paying attention to sort of the response and the reactions in the room, and you're, aware of the people that are there, essentially, you're much more able to make it an interactive type of discussion as opposed to just like a lecture or something. And so this goes for, teachers out there, professors out there. But let's talk about the interview setting.
Sure.
How would that, so we're talking about shifting attention from you to the audience. And in this case, it could be one interviewer or multiple. Sometimes I've been in interviews where it's been like 5 people interviewing me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely that would be a situation where you're nervous, and the psychosomatic reaction of, okay, now you're shaking, your voice is trembling, you're warbly, all of that stuff, right? So what do we do there?
So
in terms of
in an interview, my favorite tactic there is, because a lot of people I think go in with a bunch of rehearsed sort of sound bites that they want to bust out sort of over the course of the interview.
And there's a video about that too. Stop memorizing your answers in an interview. Wow, I didn't know there would be so many overlaps in this. Okay, well, there you go.
Well, you got a lot of videos.
I'll link it below.
And
the memorization.
Right, so people come in with these memorized sound bites and want to use those. Unfortunately, those end up sounding robotic and
definitely just overly rehearsed.
Yeah, overly rehearsed. I think the number one thing to do instead in an interview is to sound natural.
Yeah.
Right. And that sounds, of course, much easier to say than to do, but there's a great way to do it. And the goal is to, instead of going in there saying, okay, I want to talk about myself the whole time, the goal instead is you want to connect with the person across from you. You want to have a conversation with them. And as we started out saying earlier in this, a conversation includes listening, includes reading the other person. And so
asking
questions, exactly, right? You want it to be a conversation where, because interviews, a lot of what interviews aren't necessarily specifically what you said. If you come up with something revelatory during the interview, that'll be in your favor.
Right.
But I would say the number one thing in the interview is, when they walk out, what is the impression they were left with?
How did you make them feel?
How did you make them feel, exactly? And that often doesn't have to do with the specific things you say. It has much more to do with how you say them and how you made them feel during the interview. And if you're just sort of reciting a bunch of stuff robotically,
that sounds amazing, let's say.
Yeah, you may be Shakespeare, but if it's done in a way that's not natural and conversational, they're going to walk and be like, okay, well, I just felt like I watched a speech, and that's not going to work well if this person's in front of a client. Right. So, and by doing this, and I like how you segued from the public speaking situation to this, it's the same concept. By focusing more so on having a conversation and connecting with them, you take the focus off of you and you put the focus instead on sort of the content and nature of the interaction. Right. Yeah. And it just, suddenly you're not worried about, are you shaking? Is my breath, off, or whatever it is. You're just focused on, okay, I want to learn more about this person. I want to understand what they are interested in, so then I can talk about what they're interested in, and so forth.
Honestly, like, the shakes will go away once you breathe and also turn the focus, right?
Yeah.
Shift gears. It really does. So in the next, speech you give, or the interview you have, or a group that you have with your friends, maybe like story time, I don't know, like storytelling, anytime you find yourself shaking, be it your voice or your hands or whatever.
A date too, if you think about it, a date might be the most, what's the word?
Agonizing?
Agonizing, right, because
a first date,
nervous on stage. But if you're really nervous in a date, chances are, it's not going to go as well.
Unless the other person's nervous too, then they might find
maybe
it
everyone's
like
nervous.
Endearing. Maybe.
There's no question. The more natural you can be, the better time everyone has. Right.
And honestly, one of the best ways to do that is to really don't make it about you. And again, it's about like dissolving the ego, right? It's really like, you're not there. You're just there to, maybe focus on that person for a little bit. Ask them about, their hobbies or passions or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And of course, that is part of getting the conversation going is getting the other person to talk, right? Because that A, it takes the focus off of you, and B, it ensures that you're getting stuff that's interesting to them. It's tougher in an interview and a speech because you're there to do it, but there's still opportunities to do that, right?
Right.
I always enjoy the speeches, and the speech is almost not the right word. I would say a public talk.
Yeah.
Right? Because a speech really suggests that you're just reading off this piece of paper, or you have something
You're at
memorized.
a podium.
You're at a podium, right? Where in my experience, the best talks tend to be the ones where they are interacting with the audience, making sure, like, is this interesting to you guys? Like, if so, we can dive more into it. They're taking questions during it.
Right.
So in any event, yeah, that interactivity really has a broad range of effects, one of which is reducing the shakes.
Right.
Right.
Definitely.
And would you say that the shakes in the hands and in the voice are sort of the same thing?
I think it definitely, the root cause, I think, is the same.
So. Yeah.
I think it manifests differently in everyone. And honestly, for some people, I think some people don't shake necessarily. They might start sweating.
That's interesting. So other sort of physiological panic responses.
Right. And these are psychosomatic, because when we get nervous or we're afraid, or if there's a potential threat, right, that's very much a fight or flight response. And if we're not fleeing, then we're fighting. And if we have to fight, then cortisol levels go up. Sorry.
IQ goes down.
Exactly. And then we just have to sort of figure out what to do.
Actually, on that topic, the best boxers, because I'm thinking about fighting, right? And you'd assume when you're in a fight, right? A boxer has to keep their wits about them, right? Boxing is actually very strategic, right? You have to be smart about it. And so the best boxers do not get into fight mode necessarily when they're fighting, right?
What do they get into?
Instead, they center themselves, right? And so for them, it's not a situation where your cortisol's up. They go into a boxing match the way, a cyclist would go into the Tour de France.
Wow.
Where it's much more about, okay, instead of how's my body going to perform today, it's more so, okay, here's my strategy. This is what I plan to do. And, in round 2, I'm going to do this. And I sound like I know what I'm talking about in boxing. I don't know much. I just heard a few interviews.
But you're an athlete. So it's part of that is the prep time that goes in.
I know enough to know what kind of headspace they try and get themselves into. And the point is, in all these venues, whether it's public speaking, whether it's a date, whether it's you getting in the ring, it's all about framing the mindset in a way that allows you to approach it intelligently, right? And naturally to sort of perform at your best.
Your best.
And so I think a lot of that has to do with, because I think we haven't necessarily touched on this quite yet, is the preparation ahead of time.
Definitely. Okay, so prepping ahead of time, the recon aspect. It really depends too, right? What kind of situation you're going to find yourself in that might be the cause for worry, or the root cause of the shaking, or whatever type of anxiety that will come from that interaction.
Yeah.
So let's say if it's a speech, or no, let's not even go to speech. Let's say presentation. I'm imagining, a college or university presentation where the classroom you'll be in, the audience.
Yes.
These are all really good advantages that you should work, that are actually working in your favor. So the first thing is, if you have time to just go into that classroom, go into that space, walk around, get a feel for the room, because a lot of times, when you're a student sitting in your desk or in the table areas, right? It's very different than being up at the front of the classroom.
Yes.
Like the teacher would be.
Different
view. So you definitely want to get a feel for that. So walk around, maybe
imagine people in the seats.
Yes,
right.
Definitely. And just sort of, pay attention to maybe thinking about locking eyes with people and not just, glazing over them, looking at
the
their
space
foreheads.
that you have to move around. Right? Are you going to walk? Are you going to pace? How much space do you have?
Exactly.
On what side of the screen are you going to stand if you're pointing to a presentation?
Right. And so the AV, making sure that would work ahead of time.
Getting familiar with the tech. Tech always goes wrong.
Always. It does. You always have to recon ahead of time with that. what does it feel like to hold the laser, the point clicker in your hand?
What does it look like? Yeah,
all of these things. So if we can do as much as we can up front without rushing last minute to try to frantically figure out how we're supposed to use the projector or the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Do that as much as you can, because it definitely will diminish your
even getting into
anxiety.
The clothing that you're going to wear.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right?
Well, that's the next level. I love that.
Even getting into the clothing that you plan to wear that day can really help. The more you can make the sort of the event, whatever it is, the more you can make that more like a normal day. Right? Something that feels natural, the less can go wrong. Right. This is essentially the way it works.
And the more confident you'll
feel, right? Yeah. It's the less different it'll feel, right? Our bodies are conditioned for repetition, right? Because that uses less energy. That's an evolutionary tactic. Right. So the more we can condition ourselves ahead of time for that specific situation, the more muscle memory will be at play, and the smoother it'll go. And I think a lot of people do think of prep as all they focus on is
the words,
what they're going to say. But there's so much more to that prepping process. Yeah. That if you can get familiar with, and if you can't get to the venue yourself, talk to the person who's hosting it, who's there.
Definitely.
Get some information from them. Yeah. Figure out what's important to know ahead of time, so that the fewer surprises.
It's true.
Right? The less you'll be off.
It's so true. Quick anecdote here. So a couple of months ago, I gave a short talk. Remember? You weren't there, but
I remember. Yeah.
So the talk was at a beautiful venue, and I didn't know, I hadn't been to that specific venue, but I'd been to others like it. And so anyway, it was this nice like outdoor space. And when I got there, it was, still light out, and that was the plan. The plan was to have it be, the first speech, which was my speech, was going to happen, right off the bat, after people did a little bit of networking, but it was supposed to still be light out. Well,
you were the headline.
Yeah. Anyway, so it comes time to the speech, and they hand me a microphone, which did not work.
Of course.
So, okay, well all right. I was already thinking about projecting my voice, which really does come from the diaphragmatic breathing. Okay, so that was sort of addressed. The curveball, though, was that it was dark out, and I didn't have a script or anything, because I had already thought about what I was going to say and share, but I couldn't see the audience. So it was really sort of disorienting.
I remember mentioning that.
Almost pitch black, and I'm just seeing like shades of, like a nose here and there, like an
amorphous shapes.
Yeah, these amorphous shapes that it was very disorienting, and it kind of threw me for, it got me by surprise. It threw me off a little bit, and I really had to center myself, and I wasn't shaking, but I definitely was disoriented, because there was just this lack of, like you said, it was just like shadows, basically, like these amorphous beings. And it was really interesting. But
it's something, to the point I think you're making here is that even something so small as that
we don't even think about,
right? That you it's very hard to anticipate.
Yes.
Can throw you off. And then once you're off,
you have to find a way to get back on. So I think I asked a question, and then so somebody spoke, and then I got to see some real people in front of me.
Do you remember how one of the things we did though for your prep? I always enjoyed.
Oh yes.
I learned this from Josh Waitskin, who is the character
chess master.
He's a chess master. He's a real person who was also the center of a movie called Finding Bobby Fischer. Yeah. So he was a chess prodigy who everyone thought would be the next Bobby Fischer. And he has a very interesting life. He now advises hedge funds and other high-powered sort of high-pressure decision makers.
Yeah, C-suite people.
To basically think clearly using some of the tactics that we've actually discussed. In any event, one of the things he did when he was a kid for his chess matches was that he would try to replicate, and this is very related to what we're saying, he'd try to replicate as much possible adversity as he could, right? So
anything that could potentially go wrong.
Off. So he'd get someone had to smoke a cigarette, like blowing cigarette smoke in his face.
Have the band come and play.
Yeah, bands playing, loud noises. like flashing lights,
getting heckled, booed off the
he'd have his opponent like when he's practicing, kick him on the foot, right? Anything that could possibly go wrong to distract him. So I tried to
prepare.
So I was, when she was practicing her speech, I was doing cat calls for the audience and, waving my hands, dancing, making noise, basically trying to distract her.
And it was so hard it was great. Well, because I just wanted to laugh. I mean, I thought that was hilarious. You were just really making me laugh. But it worked. But the thing that we did not recon for was the lack of light.
Lack of light.
So
now we know in the future.
Now we know in the future. And honestly, like, what would be the advice there? If the darkness throws, I mean, that's so.
Well, I don't think you prep for those specific scenarios, but I think what you do is you go in saying
it could happen.
So what I've done is prepped as much as I can prep.
Right.
And
the rest is going to be live performance.
Chances are things are, in fact, I'm going to assume that things are still going to go wrong.
Right.
I've prepped for a lot of them. There's going to be more that are going to go wrong.
Right.
Right. And so what I've done is I've prepared as much as I can prepare.
Yeah.
The rest is fate.
Exactly.
And let's just assume that a few more things can go wrong. And when they happen,
I'll handle it.
It'll be like, I knew something was going to go wrong. There it is.
But I always love that. Sometimes I like when those little things go wrong because it just shows because so if that were to go wrong, if something were to go wrong, then it's like, okay, well, the rest of the speech is going to be great because that thing already happened.
Totally.
So it's like, okay, well, now that we got that, we got past that. Now
You're
it's
totally right. Yeah.
Fine.
Sometimes if the mic's not working, and you like click, and then the audience laughs.
Yeah.
And immediately everyone's more relaxed.
Exactly. And it's just that then the rest of the event or the speech will just be so much.
I feel like that's a fourth strategy. I'm gonna go with the fourth strategy here.
Let's do it.
A fourth strategy is something doing something goofy, right?
Oh yeah. That's
just like having something go wrong. Basically, if even a tiny thing goes wrong,
welcome it.
Make a deal of it. Make a deal of it, right? If you sort of tripped over yourself a little bit, make a deal of it. Get everyone laughing.
Yeah.
Feel like you've already made a mistake. So this was never going to be perfect. This isn't a piano recital, right?
And even if it were,
it's okay if something goes wrong.
I had a piano recital where my piano teacher was turning the pages and he was so nervous. He was so more nervous. I wasn't nervous.
Yeah.
And he threw my paper on the ground by mistake, like the notes, because he was shaking. My piano teacher was shaking.
Geez.
I was like 7 years old, maybe. It was shaking. And it flew on the ground in front of everyone. There was a huge gasp from the audience.
I can imagine.
I picked it up. I leaned over, I picked it up, put it back on the stand.
He's probably freaking out.
Yeah, he was freaking out.
Yeah.
And continued. And I was just like,
amazing.
Whatever.
Amazing. Yeah. So embrace
it.
When
happens.
things go wrong.
It happens.
Because that humanizes the situation. It decompresses the tension. And
it makes it fun too. It's live performance.
Yeah. And it reduces the stakes. At that point, something's already gone wrong. Another thing goes wrong. What's the big deal?
Part of why we wanted to do these live streams, by the way, is because, we have our lessons that obviously there's a lot of thought and the editing and all that stuff that happens. These nice packaged lessons for you guys, but which is really important. And when you have like a specific thing that you want to learn, but then we also wanted to show a little bit of our personality and our, the authenticity that we really want to share with you guys. And honestly, just, if something goes awry in the live stream, like we had a call the other day.
Oh, yeah.
It happens, right?
I wish I knew the episode we could point you to. It's hilarious.
And it's just fun. It's just fun.
So,
wait, we have a little shout out here.
Yeah, they're just saying Merry Christmas.
Oh, it's communication coach Alex Lyon.
Oh, Alex Lyon.
One of my favorite channels. Definitely check out his channel.
Yes.
Awesome.
Please
stuff.
watch Alex Lyon. Yeah.
So you can find it over in the channel, suggested channels that
Big
I have
inspiration for
on
us.
my page, for sure.
Yeah. And Merry Christmas to you,
Merry
Alex.
Christmas.
So speaking of which, I'm having a blast, but I want to be respectful. We have a chef in the other room who needs our help with Christmas prep.
Yeah.
And so I think
we just have way too much fun on
we
these.
should bid everyone adieu.
Okay. We'll bid you all
a quick recap.
Edelweiss.
Edelweiss?
Edelweiss.
Okay. A quick recap.
So breathing.
Breathing.
And not the shallow breath, right? We want
deliberate, deep breaths.
Seated breathing.
Intelligent, evoking breaths.
Yeah. And really hold it at the top, right? So when you breathe and you fill your diaphragm as if you're imagining a balloon expanding, then hold it at the top and then release slowly through the mouth.
Deep breaths. The second one is taking the focus off of yourself
and putting onto the audience.
And put onto the audience and the topic, right? Dissolving the ego, as you said.
Dissolving the ego.
Number 3 was preparation.
Yes.
And that doesn't just mean what you're going to say,
but the space and imagining. So just off of that really quick. So let's say you're in an interview and you don't know where that's going to be. Just try to replicate an office setting.
Right.
Just try to be like maybe in a chair. So if it's a swivel chair, don't move around. Really try hard to think about these things. So it's the whole package of the performance.
And also prepping for the things that go wrong, which ties into the 4th one.
Even turn the lights off if you have to.
Turn the lights off if you need to. Yeah, do it in the dark. Why
not?
Do
it in the dark.
Mirror, do it in front of the camera, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then the 4th one is when things do go wrong, because they inevitably will, embrace it.
Yeah,
embrace
have fun with it.
Yeah. Turn it into an excuse to laugh a little bit, to humanize the situation, and decompress the situation.
And honestly, that will make it memorable for the audience too.
And I think if you do these things, you don't have to do them all at once, and you can sort of gradually work them in. But as you do start to do them, you'll find that the shakes that you have, whether it's your hands or your voice,
disappears.
Yeah, those don't happen anymore because the focus is elsewhere.
Exactly.
And you're prepared, and your mind's in a good spot.
And you're prepared that something will go wrong. And it's okay.
Yeah. So
part of the fun of the live performance.
Indeed.
All right. Well, so that's a wrap on this. Definitely check out the videos that I mentioned. And I will link them below as well so that you can click on them. Sign up for our newsletter. We email you guys once a week. So you can do that at myexlearning.com and share this live stream with a friend. Yes. You might also want to Explearn with us and supercharge your social skills.
Yes, indeed.
Right?
All right. Yes.
All right. Enough advertising.
Merry Christmas, guys. For those of you who celebrate, happy holidays. Yes. And we'll see you
next week.
Next week.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Happy Explearning.